My topic today is why I am a Wiccan. So I thought I'd start with a bit of an explanation of Wicca for those of you who are unfamiliar with it. So I'm the author of this book, All Acts of Love and Pleasure. You might recognise that as a quote from the charge that I just read. And it's all about including, Wicca is very LGBT welcoming, but some of the rituals could do with a bit of tweaking. So that's kind of what this is about, but it's also about the Wiccan attitude to the world. Thought I'd share that with you. So Wicca is primarily a religion where the practitioners interact with the world on many levels: physical, spiritual, magical and emotional. Initiatory Wicca is essentially an esoteric mystery religion. So it's all about the inner experience of the connection to the divine. So esoteric mystery religion, a bit of a technical term, but essentially it means the inner connection to the divine. So, and every practitioner is a priestess or a priest. So a mystery religion is also one in which the dramas of the psyche are enacted by and for the benefit of its initiates. But because these mysteries often involve non-verbal concepts and experiences, it's difficult to talk about them in a verbal way. So initiatory Wicca has 3 degrees. Now these are not hierarchical, they're to do with levels of experience. So after the first degree initiation, the initiate is responsible for their own spiritual development. So at that point they are a priest unto themselves. So we also have the concept of the priesthood of all believers, which was very important in the Reformation, as I'm sure you're aware. In some groups, the period between first and second initiations, where the new initiate is helped to develop their spirituality by the rest of the coven and the high priestess and high priest. And after the second degree initiation, they may take on responsibility for assisting others with their development. And after the third, the psyche is held to be fully integrated with itself. So contemporary initiatory Wicca has many variants: Gardnerian, Alexandrian, and various offshoots of these, but all share an adherence to a similar ritual structure and the practice of initiation. The contemporary craft, which is what we call another name for Wicca, draws upon its roots in the Western mystery tradition and looks to traditional forms of folk magic, folklore, and the pagan traditions of the British Isles for inspiration. The structure of our rituals remains reasonably constant, but the content varies quite a lot according to the inclinations and tastes of individual covens, and each coven is autonomous. Only initiations remain fairly standard in order to ensure that everyone has that same shared experience of initiation. Wicca is practiced in a sacred circle, and most rituals have a structure broadly based upon the Western mystery tradition, so that's the occult tradition over the centuries. This involves consecrating the space and orienting it to sacred geometry, so the 4 directions are very important. Raising some power, performing the ritual, and sharing consecrated food and drink, and then closing the circle and dismantling the sacred space that we've created, bidding farewell to the sacred powers and beings that we've called upon. And everybody usually brings a contribution to the feast, so it's kind of a potluck. So the basic structure of the ritual is similar to the telling of a story. It has a beginning, the opening of the circle, a middle, which is the purpose for which the ritual is being conducted, whether it's celebratory or healing magic or whatever, and an end, so the closing down of the space we've created. There are 8 festivals in the Wiccan year: Samhain or Halloween, which is on the 31st of October, and for us that's kind of our most sacred time of year, which we commune with the ancestors and the dead. Yule, the 21st of December, also known as the winter solstice. Imbolc, the 2nd of February, which is when life starts returning to the earth and start seeing the trees putting forth buds and the lambs, sheep giving birth to lambs. Spring equinox, the 21st of March. Beltane, the 1st of May, so this is when traditionally the sheep would be sent up to higher pastures and people would dance around maypoles and jump over Beltane fires and to make love in the woods. Midsummer, which is on the 21st of June, so at this point the sun is at its highest and starts to decline. Then we have Lammas or Lunasa, which is the harvest festival, or the early harvest, on the 1st of August. And then we have autumn equinox on the 21st of September, so that's when day and night are equal. So the dates, the practice and the meaning of these vary according to where the coven is located. If you're in Australia, the solstices and equinoxes are the other way around, and they also move the other festivals to match. So yeah, if you go to Australia, it's very different. It also depends on when particular plants actually come out. So if, it isn't, for some people it's not Beltane until the hawthorn blossom is on the edges, or it's not Imbolc till the snowdrops have come out. And it also depends on the local traditions where you live. So some of the covens in America are now starting to realise, actually, our climate's a bit different. We should adapt to our local climate. So most Wiccans practice magic for healing and other ethical results. We have a moral injunction, which is, if it harms no one, do what you will. And what this actually means is that because it's impossible to do anything without causing some harm somewhere, it means you can't just do what you like, you have to think about the consequences of your actions. So the intention behind the working of magic isn't to impose our will on the universe, but to tweak the currents of possibility a bit to bring out a desired outcome. So, although the Wiccan Rede is very, very important and a foundational thing, the Wiccan Rede is, if it harms no one, do what you will, which I just mentioned. To my mind, the most important aspect of Wiccan ethics is the list of 8 virtues which comes in the charge of the goddess. Beauty and strength, power and compassion, mirth and reverence, honour and humility. And each of these pairs of virtues points to the need for balance. Because if you are too focused on your honour, then you might be too prideful and too punctilious about a slight. So if you are then also humble, that will balance out the focus on honour. On the other hand, if you're too humble, you'll end up like Uriah Heep and just be kind of annoying. So the two virtues balance each other out, and the same occurs with mirth and reverence, that it's always good to have a moment of mirth along with your experience of the sacred. So most Wiccans generally believe in reincarnation, with the possibility of rest between lives in a region which is usually referred to as the Summerlands. Some believe that the spirit joins the ancestors, but the soul is reincarnated. You'll notice that throughout what I've just said, I've been going many Wiccans. This is because we don't have a creed or a fixed set of beliefs. So it's very, you have to say most Wiccans believe or most Wiccans do. So my experience of Wicca started, I guess, when I was about 6. Obviously I hadn't heard of Wicca at this stage, but when I was about 6 I had a series of visions, or maybe dreams, I'm not sure, where I met with a god. It wasn't clear to me at the time who he was, but I now think that it was Odin. And he inhabited a rocky and hilly landscape which was fairly arid, and I would go there in my imagination and meet with this god. It definitely wasn't, the overarching spirit of the universe, it was an individual god. Later on, I read the Narnia books, and all the pagan elements in those books really stood out for me. The talking animals, the talking trees, the dryads, the river gods, and the fauns. I think I first started trying to talk to trees when I was 12. And obviously, talking to trees is tricky, but you do get a sense of something coming back. But the book that really made me realise that I'm a pagan was Puck of Pook's Hill by Rudyard Kipling. And it turns out that Gerald Gardner, the founder of Wicca, was also influenced by this book, as he included one of the poems from it in his ritual for Beltane, the festival of spring, merriment and love. So I realised that I'm a pagan sometime around 1985. So I was pondering my values of celebrating life and pleasure and the earth, and I realised that paganism was a good label for my value system. I first discovered Wicca in my final year at university. I'd read an excellent book called Dreaming the Dark, Magic, Sex and Politics by Starbuck, and I liked its message that darkness represents the rejected feminine side of life, and that darkness and light are equally sacred. I had also always found the idea of the witch attractive, the idea of a healer, a shaman, and a woman who stood in her own power, rejecting patriarchy. So when I was introduced to a real Wiccan, and eventually got initiated into Wicca, I felt a sense of homecoming. When I heard the words of the Charge of the Goddess for the first time, I found them overwhelmingly beautiful and resonant. Whilst I've had moments over the years when I've disagreed with aspects of Wicca, especially some of the more duotheistic theology embraced by some people, the idea of a god and a goddess, and the way that some Wiccans are insufficiently inclusive towards lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgender people, I've always come back to that sense of beauty, the sense of connection and homecoming, the feeling that I have found my tribe. A tribe of people who are individual and interesting, independent thinkers, wonderfully creative, who celebrate sexuality and wildness and the sheer joy of being alive. I'm also a polytheist because I believe that divinity is manifested in many forms, and that the idea for me of an all-pervading single deity doesn't stack up alongside the fact of the infinite universe. So for me, if the pantheist deity is the mind of the universe, it must be either so huge that it can't be aware of our tiny consciousness, or it can't be conscious in the same way that we are. So it's difficult then, I feel, to have a personal relationship with it. You may feel differently. With polytheism, I can have a personal relationship with any number of different deities with different perspectives on life. There's Mercury and Athena for intellectuals, Cernunnos and Artemis for those who like forests, Odin, Bragi and Brigid for poets and bards, and so on. Pretty much everyone has difficulty relating to the idea of the ultimate divine source or to an infinite being, so people feel they need to relate to something smaller. That's not to say we shouldn't deny the infinity of the divine, but sometimes we need to focus on something smaller because we are finite beings. In ritual, we express our deepest yearnings towards what we hold to be of greatest worth. In Wicca, it's possible for a polytheist and an atheist and a duotheist and an animist and any other kind of beast to circle together if we share the same values and a similar practice. Our theology is fuzzy, and there's a greater focus on experience than there is on theology. There's plenty of room for mystery in Wicca. We don't know what the nature of the gods is, so all our theorising is probably inadequate, and most Wiccans acknowledge that. We are aware that we don't know everything about the gods, and that we only see the faces that they choose to show us. That sometimes it may be more illuminating to say what the gods are not than to attempt to say what they are. In a Wiccan ritual, the words, the energies, and the space are beautiful and resonant. We have crossed a threshold into a new realm, a realm that feels closer to the gods and goddesses. This is the place between the worlds, where we walk on the edge of time and space, with one foot in the other world. The circle is a space where you can commune with the universe, develop the self, engage in sacred play, and honour the divine within each other. There is freedom from unnecessary social constraint. We celebrate the beauty of the night in the human body, and the firelight flickering on the naked flesh, the ecstatic leaping across the fire, wild and free. The flames, symbolic of life and passion. The feeling of journeying together to other worlds, communing with the ancestors and the land and the spirits of the land, walking with gods and goddesses. I've now been practicing Wicca for 25 years. After that amount of time, the cycle of seasonal festivals becomes part of how you see the world, and everything is seen in a pagan perspective, looking for the most life-enhancing option in any given situation. seeing everything as a spectrum rather than as two poles of a binary choice, trying to ensure balance, create harmony, and care for the earth and all beings